Change the title. Game dev stuff. Writing, planning, routes, for building. Change category, software and game development. Is that the right category? Which? Software and development. Is this the right category? It is, okay, cool. That was... my title updated. QA, Hannah, game developer, Netorare, game dev stuff, writing, planning routes, lore, world building. Cool. Am I in the right category now? Software and game development. Yep. I don't know what the fuck I'm listening to. Notifications. Stream. Twitter notifications, Blue Sky. Just hey Distills, how you doing? What else do I need here? Doing homework? Oh yeah. So what time is it for you now? It's 10 p.m. Okay. Bit better than 1 in the morning. Cause yeah, it's 3 p.m. here. What else do I need? I got my docs. Got map. Need my folders. Folders. Obsidian. RPG Maker. Notepad. Actual notepad, just in case. Okay, cool. I think I'm good here. Yes, I fell asleep on the stream. Yeah, well, I didn't really go much longer. I only did like an hour stream. I was pretty tired myself, actually. And I'm trying to keep a more normalish sleep schedule at the moment. Okay, I think we're good here. Um, close that. My cell. Sure my documents are loading. Okay, I think we're good here. Alright. What else did I need? No, I think we're good. Yeah. Um, Alright, I needed the original timeline of mine on the other screen. I can reference that. Okay. I'm just kind of continuing on with the timeline stuff I was working on the other day. I just had everything on. Okay, here we go. I had everything on screen, then I fucking lost it. Um. So now I'm working on like the. So we're up to basically the first era of the races starting to exist on the planet, basically. And the idea is like elves, like there's like a proto race that existed on the planet, and they kind of got corrupted and influenced by all the various runes and basically the magic of the world. And they kind of, as they spread out across the planet, interacting with the different magics around, they started evolving into the various different races. Is kind of the idea. Let's see here. The the flickering dawn of the first era begins. Disorder, darkness, and chaos reign. Um, Disorder and darkness reign. And from the chaos, the first proto. What did I call it before? First proto race emerged. The Kurfe race. I kind of like already wrote this fucking backwards. The flickering dawn of the first era begins, where only disorder and darkness reign. And from the chaos, the first proto race emerged. The Huafei race. Merged. First proto race, the Huafei race merged from the supercontinent of Netorare. But as they spread across the land, they were overwhelmed by the corruption of the runes, and Nemira drawn to enter by the original creator. First era begins. Twilfei, Tori, runes, Nemira, enter original creator. Twisted and reshaped by the chaotic inheritance of the original creator, the UFA splintered. The UFA evolved into countless forms. Elves, I'm trying to think. I think I'm just gonna go. So I kind of like decided to well, I mean, I kind of like came up with my own names for different races and stuff like that. Try to keep things a bit more unique instead of like sticking to the generic terms. But I think for the sake of this timeline, I had to stick to the generic terms instead of trying to complicate it. As some of the names are kind of like still not 100% happy with. So, as I've kind of explained before, I'm not very creative when it comes to coming up with names or people, places, things, or even just like the races themselves. Um, so, hey Kiblet, how you doing? Because basically, there's a few different kind of like big phases. So the first phase is like when like the original creator and the gods all existed, and they're all doing whatever the fuck they're doing. Then everything kind of goes to shit, and the the cycle, the universal cycle, is kind of like um, stagnates or is paused, and that's when like the the first races start to emerge on the planet of Enter, where the game takes place, and it starts with like the elves and like giants and all that kind of stuff. And the idea is that humans kind of start off very, very, very primitive, like even very like they're like a lower intelligence, basically humans. They don't have like they're not like modern humans or whatever. And they're kind of like basically treated as like slaves or prey, hunted and all that kind of stuff. And the idea is there's like a stalemate between five different, basically like five different races. Like basically the five, there'd be more races, but there's like five main races that each have like their own like god in this period. And then the idea is eventually a human emerges that is able to harness the runes and kind of like takes down all the different gods, and then basically ushers in the age of humanity or man. Doing good. You picked up where you left off yesterday. Yeah, just continuing with the timeline stuff. So I don't know why this is lagging. That's annoying. Why is it lagging? Why is my computer lagging? I feel like RPG Maker. I feel like there's actually a bunch of different programs. Like Chrome does it, RPG Maker I'm sure does it, but everything just has fucking memory leaks. And the longer I use these programs, the shittier performance just gets over time. Anyway, the idea is basically at the start here at some point you have like so you have like the elves. I'll try to stay for a chunk of the stream as much as my sleepy ass allows me. That's cool, man. I appreciate you stopping by and hanging out. But yeah, don't feel obligated to stay if you want to go to bed. Can't miss out on good quality sleep. There will always be the VODs, and I'm gonna start uploading the VODs to the YouTube channel as well. The dev channel. Since Twitch doesn't let you keep VODs longer than 7 days or 14 days, which is pretty annoying. Okay, so basically, I'm trying to like think of like what the gods are that are gonna exist. So you're gonna have an elven god. The idea is when the elves first appear on the continent, the elves are like still not there. still not as they're still like an evolution behind, basically. So like you have like the first identifiable elven race, and then they would split further into like the high elves, the sun elves, the moon elves, the sea elves, that kind of thing. So when the elves first come to the continent from across the ocean, um, they are older elves, and the idea is they were like more unified as one. And it's basically like yeah, they were more unified as one. And then later on, after the big war between the five different factions or five different alliances, that's when they would splinter into the three elven races that are in the current timeline. It's not that late. It's 11 p.m. 11:30 p.m. Well, I think probably. I mean, yeah, I'm just gonna keep messing with different stream times, starting times, and kind of see what's a good time to kind of set as my main time. Because obviously, I'd like to be consistent, not just start like randomized times all over the place. Yeah, so you're gonna have an elven race, elven god. There's meant to be like a lizard or snake god. There's meant to be like a snake god that exists of some kind. There's meant to be like some kind of like beast god. There's meant to be like some scorpion god. And there probably should be something that just kind of exists in the middle. Not every single continent has to have, because the way I've drawn the colors is kind of like for the the current time period, not so much what it was at the state I'm currently talking about. So the idea is you would have like five different like godlike entities, and then humans are basically just like hunted by the different races and treated as slaves and whatever. Like, yeah, pretty much throughout the whole continent. But the idea is eventually they're all funneled towards the middle. So I think for that to work, to make sense, the god that's initial territory is in like the middle of the world. Probably has to go down first. So like that god dies, and then naturally the humans kind of like start getting pushed towards the center just because of how violent and hard it is or how harsh it is in the other areas, because this territory is more open and not under control. You can kind of like get some respite. Because the elves would be a humanoid race, the lizard people would be a humanoid race, the beast people would be a humanoid race, whereas the other two I'm thinking are more like monsters or creatures. Okay. So like elves, titans, which is basically just my idea of like giants, really. I kind of wanted to have this like race of like giant stone people, like they're made of like living stone or clay. and they might have been the progenitors of the human race. I mean, that's basically copying WoW. In WoW, you have the Titans or whatever the fuck, and they're all made of. Wait, they're made of stone. Or maybe they are made of stone, and then like one of the old gods curses them with the curse of flesh, and that's how normal humans are made. They might be copying WoW a bit too much. Golems. Yeah. So elves, titans, dragons, direwolves. Actually, I don't know if wolves made. Finally caught a stream. Welcome to the stream, buddy. Hope you're doing alright. It didn't give me a... Didn't highlight your message, so you must have seen a stream before. At some point. But welcome to the stream. I hope you're doing good. Direwolves. I guess it should be more like the highest form, like the family, as opposed to like distinct subspecies in that. Oh, Long Vicious. Oh, it's good to see you in chat, man. I'm doing alright. Just working on some of the lore, world building stuff, while other parts of development are being worked on by the other team members. So elves, titans, dragons. I guess wolves kind of is the family, isn't it? Wolves. Naga? Is there like a common... I kind of want to have like scorpion people. But I don't know if there's like a common kind of like fantasy scorpion race to base it on. D&D scorpion people. Like you have Naga, which is basically oh, Dryad. Wait, what is a Dryad? I feel like I've heard that before. The centaur-like creatures. Dryadas would dry them and transform to waist down into being spiders. Oh, okay, that's more specific. Sorry, 1 second. Just talking to other members on the team here. Um, okay, so what was I just saying? What's on the agenda for today? Yeah, sorry. I'm basically just going over lore world building stuff. I'm basically working on the timeline for events that happen from like basically the start of the universe, like how the magic system comes about and all the different like gods and stuff. Stuff that isn't necessarily all going to be in the game, but it's kind of like for my own like basically building up the knowledge base of like the stuff in the game that can be used for furthering the story. So like instead of me having to make up something on the spot, it's like, oh, I already kind of like worked on this outline of what could be possible in this region or with this faction or whatever. Like a bit of like a lore bible world building book. And it's also so other writers on the team can reference it to easily know what's going on. So yeah, currently working on the timeline of events that led up to the current situation. Establishing the law, yeah. I don't know why I said it in such a roundabout way, but yeah. So yeah, so that's what I was thinking. So basically, like you have what is Naga from? Various Asian religious traditions. Naga are divine, half human, half serpents. I guess maybe Naga would kind of cover scorpion people. Um, Gear Goethe Billu. That's from Pathfinder. I don't know what that is. Oh wait, no, there is something. Akkadian Epic of Gilgamesh. Oh, so there is like something about scorpion people. Maybe I'll just class it as Naga for now instead of trying to specify. Yeah, beautiful mind mode basically. Yeah, I'm just trying to just trying to voice everything as I'm thinking of it to explain as much as possible. But I think sometimes just trail off or talk in circles a little bit. But also, at the same time, sometimes people ask the same question repeatedly, which I don't mind answering the same question twice, but I try to like give a different variation of the answer, basically, instead of repeating the exact same words verbatim. Yeah, that was a bit too loud and much going on. Isn't Naga the offspring of an elf and a dragon? I guess it depends on which mythology or folklore it comes from. The one I just read about Asian folklore or whatever. I think it was like it kind of like described as more to serpentile in general, as opposed to specifically a dragon. So I think Naga can cover it for now. It's fine. I don't also have to list out every single individual thing. I'm just trying to like put as much detail as I can without like trying to get too hung up on it. But I can't help myself by trying to get hung up on it. Um, then just your typical demons, devils, fiends, evil spirits. Evil spirits. And notice and other lesser beings. I think Naga comes from Indonesia, I'm not sure though. It might, I'm not 100% sure. I feel like there might have been like an original, and then there's like a few variations as obviously the myths spread or whatever, and are incorporated into different folklores and histories and cultures. So there might be a few different variations of it. But I've got dragons. I guess I've kind of like, in a way, I'm trying to because obviously a lot of the initial inspiration for this game was very much based on Chinese light novels. So I kind of started with Chinese mythology stuff, but then really I kind of adopted a more Western European ambience and folklore and all that kind of stuff. Mostly because of just the assets available. When you like for like tile sets or like the graphics, the pixel art that I can buy, like you can purchase tile sets to build your game with, because it's way too expensive to hire somebody to make a unique tile set. Plus, that also takes even more time of development. So I bought basically the most comprehensive tile sets I could buy for RPG Maker, which happened to be a more European medieval kind of setting. So because of that was the tile sets I had available, I kind of ended up shifting, basically still kind of keeping like the overall thing I was going for, but doing more of like a European ambience, Western flavor to it. And kobolds and goblins is a good idea. Actually, is there like a kobolds and goblins fit? Maybe they would fit under lesser beings. There's also the Ratmen that I have, which could kind of be covered as. I guess I kind of consider them lesser beings. But I kind of forgot about kobolds existing. And then centaurs. I feel like centaurs would kind of be their own thing, maybe. Because if Naga are there, then centaurs should probably be there. Okay, so continuing on then. So the idea is basically kind of like doing a quick reiteration. You have this is obviously very much a lot of mythologies like Buddhism, or even Christianity, like all the religions and stuff, Norse mythology. They usually kind of follow a similar pattern, which is you start with one thing, one entity, one whatever it is, and that one thing then splits into two opposing things, or complementary things, or like fire. Like in Norse mythology, it's fire and ice, and then from those two, you then get three, and from those three, everything else follows. So I basically just copied that because it's pretty common, I guess. This is a good way, I guess, of breaking it down. So naturally started with one thing, which is the original creator. The original creator separates into order yang and chaos yin, which is names for now. None of the names I've really got are 100% finalized. They're just the names for now, or more like descriptions of what it's meant to represent. The only one I'm kind of happy with is the original creator Amoth, because the idea is the original creator, the godhead of the universe, is effectively like a giant moth slash butterfly. So you separate into two, which is order yang, chaos yin, which then separates into three, which is basically me trying to do like a more Western god, then more like a more Eastern god, and then there was a third god, which I had something that made sense, and I've completely fucking forgotten. So I have to go back through all my old files to find out if I ever wrote down what that was meant to represent. Gnosis comes to mind, but I can't remember exactly. But anyway, from those three, in Chinese mythology, you have like heaven, earth, and man. There's like the three big realms. So that also kind of plays into the three thing. But I went with divine, world, and spirit currently. Um, and then in Norse mythology, there's like three special wells that nourish the world tree. Which again is three, so I've copied that as well. And then in the Jewish Kabbalah, you have the three pillars. So again, copying that idea of three. So there's three significant gods, basically, from the first generation of gods that supersede the rest. Um, and then there's the idea in the Jewish Kabbalah. I'm probably butchering the pronunciation of all these, but I've only just been reading Wikipedia pages. So in the Jewish Kabbalah, there's like an 11. There's like the 10 Sephirots. Each one of them is like an emanation of God and represents a different thing. But then there's like an 11th one that's like a hidden one, and kind of like going with that idea. I've kind of gone with like, so there's a fourth well, the well of the end, which is basically if that well ever comes into existence, then it's the end of the universe and everything resets back to the original creator. Um, so the original creator at some point enters a deep sleep after he splits his emanations from the 2 and 3. Um, and then the idea is, so the original creator is basically a giant butterfly moth. And the idea is when his wings first open after coming out of the cocoon, the universe begins. When his wings completely open up, go down as far as they can go, and then come back up to meet at the top, that's a cycle of the universe. And that's when once the wings touch, everything ends, and then the cycle begins again. So the idea is you have these gods that are existing, that have split from the original creator. Um, they not all of them are happy with continuing the cycle, and some want to stop the cycle, which is kind of like what kind of begins the events of the game, really. Even though it's like billions of years in the from the current timeline, the idea that some gods, because the idea is that the gods are able to continue into like basically continue into the next cycle, like they can retain their set themselves, but they're still sick of the idea of being forced to prepare themselves for their next incarnation in the hopes that they would successfully pass through to the next Kalpa. So they basically try to like sabotage the original creator, which is half successful. It doesn't destroy him, but it kind of puts him in like a bit of limbo, and the universe is kind of in stasis. And then from that, the original creator trying to forcefully awaken himself basically rips from all of the first generation of gods the bits and pieces that he originally gave to them to make them who they are, which is basically runes, which is the power system. So you have the 24 Majora runes, and then you have the 34 Menorah runes, as well as the 9 Nimira, which, copying from the Norse mythology, you have the 9 realms. So each one of those realms is like a special sphere of power, and if you control that, this is like very like metaphysical and conceptual as opposed to like a physical real things. But the idea is if you control that realm, then you have access to what that realm represents. So when the original creator first made his first 9 gods, each of them would have been basically birthed with control over one of those Numira or spheres of power, and he basically took them back, which kind of left them in like a weird spot. So he basically rips back his control over all of the runes and power he basically gave the different gods, and they all arrive on the world of Enter, where the game takes place. And he basically reaches an equilibrium once he's basically gained the 9 Numira and 24 runes, which is, in Norse mythology, you have the Elder Thirthark, however you pronounce that, which is the 24 original runes that Odin found from the Well of Wisdom, I think. And from the 24 original runes, it's actually separated into 3 eighths, which again is the 3 symbolism. Um, and then there is the younger Thirdark, which is a more recent development of the Norse runes involving other tribes and more than just the original Scandinavia, I believe, which transformed it first into 16, and then it also goes up to 34 as it's been expanded and changed. That's kind of like, so the Majora is like the original 24 runes, the Menorah is the 34 additional extended rune system, and this basically plays on the major and minor tarot cards in mysticism. So anyway, and the reason I bring all that up is because that's basically the power system for the game. So basically, fire would like so each mage or rune master in the game would have like a different like you can consider these classes. So each of like the 24 rune paths are classes. So like fire, ice, time, space. They would all be like a path that one would train in. And you can mix and match, but generally the idea is you stick to one because there can be some could have synergistic properties. Paths could be synergistic. Some could be like it's actually not good for you to mix those paths because it could be you either perform you have less your spells perform worse basically, or even worse, it could make you die or explode or something. So generally, people stick to one path, or if there's like synergistic paths, they might minor in those. And generally, the idea is because people spend such long periods of time going through these paths, you don't have enough time to focus on multiple paths. It's better to stick to one and develop as far as you can down that path. So then, after the original creator pulls all the runes to him, stripping them from the outer Numenarchs, I decided to call my gods in this universe Numenarchs. Numen means like spiritual power, and then Arch means like autarch or absolute ruler. That's kind of like where that comes from. So the original creator pulls everything towards him at the center of Enter, where he's in a state of slumber, and his body also kind of like forms like a barrier around the planet, so these outer gods can't just instantly come over to Enter to take back what's theirs. So they're waiting for the barrier to weaken, and then also the parts of them inside the barrier that they still have a connection with, they try to subtly influence to cause as much chaos in the world, which is how you get things like demons, devils, and monsters, and all sorts of stuff like that. Try to cause as much chaos as possible to destabilize what's inside the barrier, to weaken it, so they can eventually get inside. So like all of that shit going on is kind of like what leads to the various different races, and for the next line I was about to write, which is basically over time, as because these runes all originally came from like god tier entities, a normal person trying to like forcefully eat a rune or like graft it to themselves to use it wouldn't be able to handle like the will of the original entity inside it and all like the corruption that comes along with it. So the idea is that over time, these runes, as they're being used, devoured, broken, remade, um, that initial corruption slowly dilutes, and it kind of reaches a point where people can kind of use the runes pretty well and not have many drawbacks. I hope any of that made sense and was interesting to listen to. Okay, so the cycle of forcefully devouring and grafting the divine remnants birthed the first generation of ancient divines, known as the Mad Divines. So the first generation of gods that come along basically had no real like there's no like it's like basically like science and anything today is it all kind of had to start with somewhere, and people like collected their knowledge, they tested what worked, what didn't work, and eventually they would develop like this is how it should be done to save as possible for the best results. So before anyone had any knowledge of how to really use runes, people were like eating them, grafting them to their body, like tattoos and all sorts of shit like that. And the idea is because the corruption was still plentiful back then, that the first like generation of gods were basically like insane or half insane, which would lead to a lot of chaos in the world as they like fight and all this kind of shit. Does it say friends there? Do like actual friends, or do you mean fiends? Yeah, I meant fiends. I don't know what friends are. That's a good catch. I'm not going to pretend anything I've done here is original. I've pretty much like took in like probably my 10 like favorite light novels that I've read and kind of like merged different aspects I like from them into this system. Two big ones are Lord of the Mysteries and Reverend Insanity and Warlock of the Magus World. Very similar power systems. Obviously, I've tried to like do my own unique spin on it and my own unique names for stuff. But yeah. This needed to be highlighted. I mean, depending on the friends, they could be worse than anything on the list. That's true. Ugh. Been watching a TV. I don't really watch TV shows too much because I kind of like found I don't like watching stuff that's like in production. I rather wait till something's finished and I'll just binge watch the whole show in like one weekend. But so like the only shows I'm like actively watching is the new Dexter season, Dexter Resurrections, which is going okay. I think there's 2 episodes left, and I'm kind of tepid to see if they actually wrap everything up properly. And the other show is From, which is made by the same people that made Lost. If anyone remembers Lost when that was on TV, and it was pretty big. But it kind of just reminded me when you said Friends, because they have like this. The whole idea is like, during the day you can do what you want, but at night you have like these creatures that come out that just look like humans. They have creepy smiles, and they try to invite themselves into. They try to like they can mimic sounds, and they seem to like know shit about people. So they try to like they try to like get you to let them inside, and like you have to like keep runes on like walls near doors and windows to stop them from being able to come in. So you need to like they need your permission to let them in. At least that's how the first season went, and it was pretty interesting. I would say it's like 4 seasons now, and it's like kind of doing a similar thing to Lost, I suppose, where it's like just new mystery after new mystery, not exactly solving everything that was already opened up before. So it's like never. There's always more questions and not a lot of answers. But kind of just reminded me of that just then. I'm gonna assume Brian's power be considered cursed or banned, so it doesn't mean the other kid's power hidden. That's kind of what I was going to lean into, because envy, I guess, would be considered. Because I kind of talked about because I had in-game books, right? Where am I here? So you got the in-game book for the Smallwood Adventurers Guild Charter. It kind of talks about like banned runes. So like the creation, nurturing, or use of demonic or forbidden runes, such as those of the Blood Pathway, is considered treason against the Guild, the College, and the Sovereign Empire, punishable by death. So the idea is that Envy and the other Sins line of runes would be considered demonic runes. And so he would have to kind of like hide that. And that's when I wanted to kind of introduce the idea of like the virtues as like a counter force that kind of tries to put an end to like demonic entities or creatures or rune masters that use evil or demonic magic, basically. So that is something I would like to lean into and see if I can find it. See if I can do anything interesting with that. Because I kind of thought like, because so Lost is in the picture as like the main kind of like the only other sin really revealed or going to be revealed in the current story stuff. So the idea would be maybe trying to use. I guess it depends on the route, of course. I guess I'm always thinking like when I think of like these more extravagant or interesting stories, it generally kind of has to fall into the NTS route because that's where the protagonist is meant to win a little more or be a bit more proactive in planning. So the idea would be Brian in the NTS route trying to throw this group off of his scent and kind of like lead them onto Darius and Lost. So he has to deal with them and Brian can protect himself. Because the idea was going to be like The idea was going to be that basically whatever sent Brian to the coma, when like the idea is going to be that basically the area kind of like resonated, or the cave shook, or there was a big light in the sky, or some kind of attraction that people kind of knew about something in the area, but not quite what. And there's meant to be clues building up to the idea that something that lost was there, or something demonic was there, but they're not sure what. And and again quoting the guild thing. So the idea is dungeons kind of pop up here and there everywhere, in kind of like a very kind of like gamey way that adventurers go and take down dungeons. It's kind of like a normal part of the routine. You go take down dungeons with your adventuring group, and then if you find new dungeons, you have to report them to the guild, and you get rewarded for that. So the idea is all legacy dungeons, including demonic ones, must be reported to the guild. Discoverers retain the right to keep their findings, and will even be rewarded with contribution points. So the idea is Brian's going to need to report the dungeon, so he can get some of these contribution points to buy some stuff he needs. And the idea is it'll set Crowley kind of on his trail as well, because Crowley will know about the dungeon and kind of like be curious what he found there. So there's a few different like little threads there to play with that could lead into that kind of thing. And then maybe there would be like an arc where Brian's like on the run or something like that. Would be able to utilize other runes as you play, or would he be locked into his forbidden power? Well, the idea that... So alchemy is kind of a path in of itself. So the idea really is Brian's main path would be alchemy. And through alchemy, he can interact, he can use other elements. So he could create like fire potions. One of like the main ways I kind of wanted him to use to be able to do attacks in the early game is by making like unstable fire, ice, lightning, water potions that effectively act as grenades, like unstable grenades that he could use in combat by mixing the different elements in that. But as for letting the player, there would probably be story reasons where the player can like will use runes from different pathways, but actively letting the player develop different pathways, that would have to be something I'd have to think about as we get further into development of the story and that, because that could be... that could complicate things a lot. I guess the other thing to consider is that generally with these power systems, in a lot of Chinese light novels, that's always what I'm going to go back to, because that's what the basis is basically, in a normal setting without a protagonist, like basically if the universe has existed without a protagonist, it could take decades, hundreds of years to go from, say, like a rank 5 mage to a rank 6 mage. It might even be the case that you could be rank 5 your whole life and you could never ever rank up. So if you take the protagonist out, this world that I'm building as well would similarly be like that, where people take decades, hundreds of years, if they ever do, to get the next level of like insight into like fire, what fire means, so they can get to the next rank. So if you kind of look at it like that time scale, it would make sense that people aren't mixing and matching different paths, because if you basically have all of your points and knowledge in fire, then it's probably not a good idea to waste potentially decades or hundreds of your lifetime to a different path when you don't even know if you'll ever learn anything more beyond the basics of it. So I kind of have to like, that's kind of like the kind of like how the groundwork is going to be laid, so it makes more sense why the protagonist would kind of stick to the one path to help build that. Now there is another thing, borrowing once again. There's the idea of inheritances. So basically, someone that's like a really high ranked rune master that has very high insight into, say, Firepath. If he wanted to make a legacy, he would effectively take all of his knowledge of fire and basically like cut and paste it from himself into an inheritance. So he no longer has it, but he could hand it down to somebody. And like, so the big clans and all that big noble houses would do stuff like that to keep their knowledge base growing, to retain their power and stuff and push it forward. So there could be the case that maybe the protagonist could find an inheritance and like gain some insight into a path, and then be able to use some stuff from there. Like that could be a thing. There's a few messages here. Letting the player develop different pathways sounds like it would add a lot to dev time. It could add a lot. I think from like a gameplay perspective, it wouldn't add a lot. Oh wait, no, let me figure this. Like if you think about it like from a gameplay perspective, it's basically just like, oh, these spells exist, you can just use them. So like from a gameplay perspective and dev time, it wouldn't really be a huge amount. It's more the strain it has on the world building and story, if that makes sense. If it should be possible, or it feels, yeah. Good idea if this wasn't a hentai game, or the protagonist wasn't destined to lose. Would better Brian could temporarily use other runes for plot-related reasons, but it doesn't hold on to the power. It's also about, like, I guess, the level of the runes. This is something I haven't fleshed out yet, but there's, like, the idea that... So, effectively, there's 9 ranks, right? So, basically, like, rank 1 is, like, basically being, well... Rank 0 is being a true god. Rank 1 is, like, being, like, a demigod. And then rank 9 is being like the lowest level of rune masters. Everyone technically is a rank 9 rune master by the time they become of age. Because of some stuff that hasn't been developed yet, but the idea is that's how the first human effectively created got humans to become greater, to evolve from lesser beings, is that they kind of develop this kind of like extra organ, embryonic organ that becomes like the basis for magic and stuff like that. So that's how, I guess all of the humanoid races technically have some version of that, but humans never had that until the first human, the human ancestor basically made that possible. So everyone, by the time they come of age and this organ grows, like naturally people grow. So the idea is basically, I kind of like arbitrarily chose the age of 25, kind of like with the whole idea of your brain fully develops by 25. But just like puberty, people could develop this organ faster. So someone that's like completely developed their magic organ until there's better terminology for this than just calling it the organ, but I'm just saying that for now because keep it simple. So people could develop their magic organ at different ages. So that kind of like shows like talent. If like you develop your magic organ at age 16, then you get all those extra years, like 7 extra years of being able to become a rune master from someone that got it at 25 or whatever. So that kind of shows you have a lot of potential to become like a high rank rune master. But in going with that, basically, for each rank you are, so you have like the 9 ranks, and then you have like, what did I call this? Have I written it here somewhere? Mundane runes. Man embodies the essence. No. Let me just read this and see if maybe this answers it. So just like rune masters, runes are ranked from 9, the lowest order, to 1, the highest. These ranks are further divided to 3 tiers. Lower order runes, 9 to 7th. Middle order runes, 6 to 5th, collectively known as the mundane runes or mortal runes. And then sacred runes, which is 4th to 1st, which mark the threshold of divinity. So from 4th to 1st, you're basically like a demigod territory. And then rank 0 would becoming a true god. Higher order rune masters who have crossed the threshold into divinity possess a deeper connection to the divine pathways, granting them an intuitive sense of the road ahead. Among sacred rune masters, this phenomenon is known as the etheric sword, leading to speculation ascension beyond the first order is possible. So that's something I've kind of toyed with. Maybe it'll be changed, but I kind of thought that, so there are gods in the current stuff, but people aren't sure how to get to the god basically is rank 0. It's like, obviously people that are actually gods aren't going to like tell everybody how to become gods. So there's hidden information that people don't know how to get to that rank beyond the people that are actually that rank themselves. And that kind of will play into the story. So for lack of true gods, which are doing their own thing, the highest power in the world would be rank 1. Generally, high order runes are more potent and wield greater authority over their respective pathways, though exceptions exist. Because of this, a rune's order is crucial and must complement its rune master, ideally matching their order or remaining as close as possible. A 9th order rune master should use 9th order runes to maximize their effectiveness, as lower order runes would limit their potential. It's like a strong man wielding a wooden sword instead of a steel one, his strength is wasted. Conversely, if a 9th order rune master attempted to use an 8th order rune, it would be akin to a feeble man swinging a two-handed sword, overexerting himself and rapidly draining his mundane or sacred arcana reserves, and failing to wield the rune to its full potential, all while risking self-harm. I don't know what the fuck happened there. I don't know what happened there. Runes must be recharged, and while each rune is unique and the specific resources required for recharging, depending on its own nature and the divine pathway it belongs to, which generally indicate the materials needed, the general rule is that order determines its capacity. High order runes possess greater capacity, allowing them to endure prolonged usage before depleting their reserves. Also requires significantly more resources to fully charge once exhausted. Time required before recharging will hasten as the rune is used successfully. Low order runes generally have smaller capacity for use, allowing only a handful of activations before needing to be recharged. Some specific runes may only be usable once before being destroyed. The higher order the rune, the more mundane arcana or sacred arcana is expended. Okay, that didn't answer really what I was trying to do. Okay. So the idea is you have the 9 ranks of Rune Master, and then alongside that you basically have like 9 ranks of, I guess, understanding of a divine path. And that would be one of the hidden requirements for becoming a true god, is you effectively have to be a trailblazer and have the collective knowledge of what's existing in the current world of that path, and being able to push the path forward. As there can only be one true god per rune path. So the idea is, as you get to higher ranks, it's more easily for you to use this is me kind of like theory crafting my own shit right now off the top of my head, while also trying to remember stuff I wrote down like months ago. The idea was going to be that as you get more knowledge in your path, there kind of reaches like a culmination point where you understand enough about the world and the universe and the underlying system of how magic works. You can better use paths you don't have much experience with, even if it's only to just a very basic level. So this all basically goes back to say that it's someone that's like a rank 5 in the fire path could pretty easily use most runes of rank 9. At least to like the basic functionality. Because there would be runes from paths that are more utility in usage. Like a rune from the space path that can be used as like basically like it's a ring. It looks like a ring on your finger, but it's effectively like storage. Like a fridge or something. Like anyone could use that. And that would be quite common. That people would use these basic kind of more utility runes, or even like once-off runes. Like you use it once and it like activates an explosion or something, or it can reveal like a light, it'd be like a bright light or something. I don't fucking know. Sorry, I'll go back and make sure I've got all these. And a game like this, I suppose Wrath and Envy could be an interesting combination of runes, even as temporary combinations. So the sins would be kind of special in that the idea is all of the sins were originally 1, which would be the emotion or heart path. And the idea is originally there was basically a god or like a demigod that was this path, and for one reason or another, they basically split into seven personas, and envy would be one of those personas. And so the seven sins are warring amongst each other to devour the others, so they can regain their power. And whichever one is the dominant personality that defeats the others would be the one that retains themselves once they join back together. It's kind of like the big thing going on between the different sin characters. And there would be like shifting alliances back and forth between them. And so at one point in time, Envy was probably allied with some of them, and then like they fought, and then her side lost, or something went on. I still haven't filled out every single detail there, but at some point she winds up in the space at the start of the game where the protagonist is. Like in Kingdom Hearts, when Riku Terra uses dark versions of magic spells. I actually don't know much about Kingdom Hearts, but I think I know what you're talking about. Sphere is rank 7 out of rank 9, Spellium 20. Oh wait, you meant... you said lower the number, the higher the potential. That means Sphere is not powerful at all. So, I think the thing to consider here is Saphira is strong for her age and very talented for her age. I think the thing to consider is basically each academy would have maybe you would have like basically each academy would have. So there's 10 academies in the province. Each academy would have maybe like basically like 2 to 5 elders that could be rank 6 to 7. And they would have like a hidden elder or like a grand leader master person that's like basically on their deathbed. That's like a rank 8 or a rank 9. Oh, sorry, like a rank 2 or a rank 1. I think I just fucked that up. Let me try this again. Okay, so each academy, there's 10 academies in the Sovereign Empire. You have the mundane threshold and the sacred threshold. So the sacred threshold is where basically like the demigods, right? So the idea would be that you would have like the elders, which could be like from 2 to 5, maybe more, depending on how strong the academy is. That's like anywhere between rank 6 to 8. 6 to 8, or something like that. Yeah, 6 to 8. And then they might have like a head, who's like an 8, like a really strong 8, bordering 9. Or you would have like someone that's like a previous master that's basically on deathbed. That would be like a rank 1. So that would be like their hidden power, like they're basically their nuclear warhead. Each academy would have like a nuclear warhead type power that's could wipe the floor of basically the entire continent if they weren't challenged by one of the others. But they're basically like on their deathbed. Like they don't have much like life force left, so they're usually in like hibernation or something. So if you go like that way, then in the mundane levels of the academy, rank 5 would be like the leader or the guild master. I don't know why I say guild master. Like the head of the academy would be like a rank 5, and then the elders of the mundane side would be like rank 4. So if you consider it like that, then Saphira is basically at like the strongest, for being ranked 7. I completely fucked the numbers up again. Okay. So like the head of the mundane side would be like a 5. The elders would be like a 4. I just fucked it up again. Did I fuck it up? You said the Space Marine is more utility and is based just as storage, but wouldn't a Master and Space Marine be able to do crazy shit? Oh yeah, of course. Sorry, what I meant was, okay, so when I say there's a rune path, that's talking about the path that encapsulates the concept of space and everything possible to do with space. And there's like there could be like a billion different runes under the space umbrella path. The storage one is just an example of like what could be one rune that's very common that a lot of people use, even if they're not proficient in the space path. Is kind of what I was getting at. It wasn't to say that there's only space that it wasn't to say that the only space rune is a storage rune. Because yeah, space would be very insane. There would be a lot of different space runes that could do all sorts of crazy shit. Same as like time runes and stuff like that. Let me just fucking write this down so I don't like keep messing this up. Sacred, mundane. I don't know why I'm doing this all in caps. I don't know where the... What am I doing? 4th to 1st. 6th and 5th. Okay, so that actually makes no sense and I wrote that. Yeah. What the hell? So 5 would be... What? What is happening? 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, I just had to write this out because I think I'm completely fucking just mind fucked myself with all these numbers going up and down the scale. Let me read your comments first before I continue on. The lower number the higher, that means Safi isn't powerful at all, so Safi's not that strong. Okay, so what if during a hard battle envy offers player bypass higher tier runes to win however comes as a heavy penalty? And then I think I just answered what you said about space runes. Yeah, basically the rune paths and the runes are separate in the sense that the rune path basically encompasses the concept of whatever the path is. So like space, fire, lightning, ice. And in that path, there could be a billion different possibilities of how you can manipulate that element to do various different stuff. It's up to the ingenuity and the intelligence of the rune masters in creating runes to get the different desired effects that they want. So like the idea would be the space ring thing I mentioned before is very common, kind of like a item in pretty much every Chinese light novel that pretty much every character in every universe uses to basically carry everything that a character would need or want or have, like all their techniques, all their herbs, all their items, all their weapons, armor, everything, even like bedding and everything, tents, everything like that. So I kind of like just copied that example. I didn't mean to say that the space is limited to just making rings with as refrigerators. That was just an example. So, and kind of like going along with that, the protagonist being like the protagonist that has an inventory should effectively be wearing one of those rings. So there's like a more in-universe reason why the player has an inventory where they can store as much shit as they want. As for the power system, this is very loose, and obviously, as I. But to give you an idea, like, keep sticking to the mundane side, you would have like. Pretty much all forces will be separated into mundane and, well, basically the divine and the mortal side of things, because while they exist in the same force, they kind of have completely different goals and reasons and wants. So like, there would be such a chasm between like resources like a mortal level herb that an immortal or a divine person wouldn't really have much use for. They would need a divine level or a sacred level herb, even if it's the same kind of herb. Because the diminishing effects would mean it's basically useless to them. But there would still obviously be some interaction because they just exist in the same force to protect each other or whatever. So like the gods, divine people would want to protect the mundane side of their academies or whatever, because it's basically like how they find seedlings that have potential to become divine as well, so they increase their force numbers. The bigger your force is, the more labor you have, the more resources you can station people out to protect, and more income. Basically like it's like a company or a whatever. But as far as the mundane side goes, you would have like a headmaster who is basically like someone that's at the highest rank of the mundane ranks and is like on the threshold of becoming divine himself. And then below him, you would have the elders who would be in charge of looking after the students and protecting them and just administration type stuff. It would be like, so if the headmaster's rank 5, then the elders would be rank 6. And then students would basically range from rank 9 to rank 7. Basically, depending on their talent, how young they are. Well, I mean, age kind of like comes into talent. Kind of what I talked about before, that depending on like your puberty, you might develop the magic organ sooner than someone else. So the idea would be that Varric obviously developed his magic organ, and that's not a euphemism, much sooner than Brian did, which is why Varric's a much higher rank, or is a higher rank than Brian, because obviously Brian developed his very slowly. So Saphira would basically be at like the top end of her age bracket and non-elders, if that makes sense. Also, I guess runes like fire, earth, water, easy to get into master. But runes like time and space are harder to master. Yeah, there's also would be that different rune paths would be easier to learn and master than others. Because the other thing you have to consider is kind of like what I talked about before, that how pretty much in like modern day like real life, how different fields of science require a bunch of people to test theories and consolidate answers and information and like find out what's true, what's not, and push that field forward. The magic would work in a similar way, that the more common a magic is, the more people can do it. The more people can do it, the more people that can trial and error. The more people trial and error, the more answers are found. The more answers are found, the more solidified and easier that road is to walk for people that are coming into it from the beginning. So there would be like a, also based on the resources as well is the other aspect. Like if there would be plentiful earth resources or water resources or fire resources, so you have more resources to develop those paths with. So there would be like there'd be a bunch of paths that are a lot more common because of the information available and the resources available that most people would walk into, and some other paths would have less resources, either because they are just naturally rare or because how the world's changed. Maybe one path has diminished over time that used to be strong. That's kind of like what Saphira's thing was going to be, is that the strength path has diminished over time. Like because other paths came around that were more plentiful resources and easier to learn, and so people kind of like switched to those. So Saphira, in a way, is trying to like revive the strength path. That's kind of like one of her overarching goals. Could have noted just jumpstart Brian's magic organ though. So the thing is, Brian has his magic organ. It's just a special physique. That's kind of like the special physiques come into play. Um, so Brian has his magic organ. Obviously, it developed later than other people his age, which I'm trying to think if that's a plot hole right now. Maybe it'd actually make more sense if you go the other direction. That Brian was actually very talented to begin with, in the sense that his magic organ was developing. Brian's magic organ developed really fast, like really young, but it developed into the physique that he has. That might be a better direction to go, actually, because that would make more sense. Because then it would make sense that Tasha and that had to do what they had to do in the past, like they knew about it in before the current timeline, basically, before the game starts. So basically, Brian was considered to have lots and lots and lots of talent. His magic organ developed very fast. It just so happened that in a way it developed too fast and ended up becoming the void, whatever the fuck I called it, physique. And the idea is, so this kind of also plays into the nine, how I talked about how you had the nine Numira, or the nine realms. So there'd be 9 special physiques. Physique means something different. Um, I guess you could say that most people. I think I've laid it out somewhere here. Um, I haven't written it here. Um, no. Um, sorry. First we'll finish up the Saphira stuff. So Saphira is strong and is talented and is basically like an elite of her peers. So don't worry about her not being strong. Um, because you have to kind of like take in consideration everything else I had spoken about with like how how long it usually takes people to climb ranks and stuff if they're not the protagonist. That Saphira would be outstanding in the world. Naturally, the protagonists always level faster because otherwise the story would move slow as molasses. Um, so where I already have something here about this. Uh, runes, flaws, rune master, actual runes. Aether, Rune Master. Oh, here we go. So in the world of Enter, those born with poor cultivation talent are destined to remain shackled to the lowest levels of society. Their fates lie at the mercy of those above them, stepped on, exploited, and toyed with by those gifted enough to ascend and attain the order of a true rune master. Every man, mer, and kin is born with a mysterious organ located in the lower abdomen, just below the navel. This is obviously Chinese mythology stuff, and it's very common in Chinese light novels. You have like what's called a dantian. I don't know if that's how it's pronounced, but it's like a mysterious, like infinitely small marble thing below your navel, but inside could be an entire universe. So it's pretty much copying that. So by the time an individual reaches maturity, this organ will have grown and developed into an embryonic aether nexus. A rune master is someone who has transformed their embryonic aether nexus into a mundane aether nexus within their body, allowing them to generate arcana and begin manipulating runes to wondrous effect. Rune masters cultivate their chosen rune path for research, innovation, and the creation of new runes. This practice not only strengthens their abilities, but also enhances their adaptability and potential for future cultivation. Over time, this deepens their knowledge and understanding, referred to as attainment, of the pathways to the divine. Attainment was the word I was looking for before. Okay, so in going that, so basically, everybody would eventually, once everybody reaches maturity, they would have an embryonic aether nexus. So that was kind of like a natural thing that happens. But then, as rune masters have evolved and studied, like learnt, they obviously came up with a technique that can turn the embryonic aether nexus into an actual aether, a mundane aether nexus. So that's like basically a ritual that everyone has to do. And once their aether nexus will turn into, once their embryonic aether nexus will turn into their mundane aether nexus, based on their talents and various other different factors, the potential of their aether nexus is different. It's unique for each person. And it also, the big like deciding factor is how much space is inside it, like how much mana it can hold, basically. And an additional thing is sometimes it might develop into an elemental aether nexus, which means it might have like an underlying kind of like attribute of like ice, like affinity with like ice or lightning or one of the various elements. And then on top of that, you have these special physiques, which basically just means the aether nexus is kind of like a very special one in like a 1 in a billion kind of thing. And there's 9 different types of these special physiques. Estel's meant to have one. That's effectively what's killing her. Is that hers is effectively. I have this written out somewhere as well now. But I'll go over talk about the Brian stuff first. So basically, Brian has developed one of these special physiques when his embryonic aether nexus became a mundane aether nexus. It evolved into one of these special aether nexuses, which is the void something physique, which all of the physiques generally generate a lot more mana than they should. It's not necessarily like these physiques aren't necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. It depends what you can do with them. Some can kill you. Most of them will probably kill you, which is what's happening with Estelle. Basically, they absorb a lot of mana a lot faster, and some people, if you're like a nobody, poor, no family, no history, like no people that have access to high-ranking runes, you're effectively a time bomb because you can't use runes or offset the mana that's building inside you, basically. But then Brian's physique is meant to be unique in the sense that instead of absorbing mana, it disperses mana. So that's why he can never rank up to the next rank. That's why he's always kind of like permanently stuck at the lowest rank. Is the way it's meant to work is that if you think of it like a bowl, you absorb mana from the environment naturally, and then through different techniques you can be more efficient at it. And then once the bowl fills, it's meant to keep filling until basically the bottle breaks, But as it's breaking, by using these different techniques, you effectively are making a new bottle around it that's bigger. So as the old one breaks, the new one's in place. It's kind of like what's meant to be going on. So you need to build enough pressure, you need to absorb enough mana to break the first bowl to begin filling the second one. That's just expanded. But in Brian's case, he can never fill the bottle, the initial bottle, because it disperses and leaks faster than he can fill it. It's kind of like the idea behind his physique and why he's stuck at the lowest rank. And so the idea was going to be that Embryo can't just magically fix his physique, but she would have a list. She would have like a list of alchemy recipes to make potions that could forcefully break him to the next rank. And so he would have to like forcefully rank up that way, as opposed to ranking up naturally, until he gets to the threshold between mundane and divinity. Because while the special physiques are like a huge detriment throughout the mundane ranks, if you're able to actually get to the base level of divinity with this physique, then that's when it kind of like pays dividends and you get like a much more special Aether Nexus. So that's like the payoff. Because like once again, following Chinese mythology, Chinese light novels, and that there's very much a give and take in the setting, because like you have like the idea of Heaven's Will. Heaven's Will, it removes excess and replenishes deficits. So if you're having really good luck and you're doing really well, it'll start putting roadblocks in front of you to slow you down. If you're doing really badly and having really bad luck, eventually it'll throw you a lifeline. So the idea is these physiques are very destructive and dangerous for the mundane ranks, but if you manage to get through those hurdles, then heaven kind of rewards you with a much superior physique at the end. Yeah. Where the fuck am I here? The more in-depth look at the lore, power systems, character pathways, actors give me ideas for scenes. That's the other thing I would really like to consider as well, trying to incorporate as much of the magic system and stuff in not just like the battle or in the background, but trying like, I feel like there should be some good ways of using it in the scenes and stuff as well. Obviously, you can have very basic stuff like being able to see through walls or seeing what's happening in a room you're not in. But I'd like to try to like come up with more creative ways of doing stuff. Obviously, some of the routes as well kind of depend on runes. Like Estelle and Crowley, there's going to be some stuff going on there that kind of like uses the power system for how their route is developed. Is there social barriers between rank 1 and 4 and don't talk to 5 and 8? No one talks to rank 9. Yeah, there's meant to be very like strict social. It's like kind of like a caste system, really. It's basically like you could consider it like there is there's a caste system between divine and mundane, and then you have subcaste systems between the individual levels. The other thing to consider with where the fuck did I put it? I just had it open. So the other thing to consider with these ranking systems here is this is just a very generic overview, but you also have to consider, like in Chinese light novels, again referencing them, the regions are so big and there's so many different guilds and clans and stuff. They all follow this pretty much basic structure of like you would have like a rank 5 as like the head, rank 4 as the elders, and then rank 5 is the head, rank 6 is the elders, and then like the lower 3 ranks are like the students and maybe like really older members. Like basically someone that didn't have talent but is 50 years old, and basically they're just stuck at rank 7 for the rest of their lives. So but in another region the ranking could be completely different, where the base is a 7. So if the base is like a 7, in a different region, then the ranks will all kind of like shift up one or two. But in the lowest ranks, the lowest like region, the lowest level region, if you consider like an MMO, like the starting region, then everything would shift down. So like the lower ranks matter more. So because of naturally the story starts from the bottom, in the region where the game takes place, the lower ranks are more important. That's why Saphira. I guess you could say that if Saphira was in like the most powerful region in the verse, then maybe she wouldn't be considered the most talented person. But also, she didn't grow up in that region. If she did, maybe she would be. It's hard to say. She's grown up in the lowest level region, but by the lowest level region standard, she's a prodigy. But the way I've structured the world is kind of not very much. That's kind of like a big difference between how Chinese light novels operate and how I've structured this. It doesn't necessarily mean that a rank 7 could mop the floor with rank 5s from a different region. It would mean that someone that's born in a higher region, by default, having access to more resources and even higher quality mana in the air, they might get through the ranks faster, and so for their generation, the common rank might be 7, or the common rank might be 5 instead of 7. So basically if you're in the lowest region possible with very poor mana in the air and not many resources, then it would be common for everybody in the generation to be rank 9, maybe rank 8. It's pretty much, yeah. It's like kind of like how education works in like this common modern times or whatever, or like college athletes and stuff like that, like resources and education, and basically being what would you call it? Birth. Well, yeah, it's just birth basically. But yeah, there is meant to be a very strict kind of like social system, and that people, lower rank people, generally would always refer to higher rank people, even if they're like, if you're like 90 years old and you're rank 9, and you've got Varric who's like 18 and like rank 6 or whatever, then that guy that's 90 years old would have to call Varric senior brother or whatever if they were both in the academy together, because he outranks him. Age doesn't really come. Age only kind of comes into the talent side as far as developing your Aether Nexus or whatever, or like what rank you can get up to per your age. But someone that's a low rank has to treat someone with a higher rank with respect. And as far as Chinese light novels go, that gets really fucking insane. Like if you're like a rank 9 and you look funny at a rank 8, he might just kill you in the street, and that's cool. Like, you shouldn't have disrespected him. Like, I didn't want to go that insane with the game, but it will play to that kind of thing where like basically the way I want to. So another thing that kind of is common is like there's very much face is important, or like your reputation. So like they might not do something to you in public, but they'll get someone to keep track of you or what you're doing. And then if you go on an excursion to do a quest outside the guild, then they'll send people to trail you and then like take care of you outside of the guild. So I kind of wanted to play with that kind of thing, where like Crowley would be sending people after Brian or whatever, or even like later when he gets to the academy, there could be students that the protagonist doesn't like or run into them, and they'll start trying to like send people hitmen after you and that kind of stuff. Um, yeah, this is face and reputation are very important, and if you even so much as slight somebody in the slightest way possible, they'll pretty much want to kill you for it. So I feel like I kind of want to play to that as best I can, because that was kind of like the intention, but not being too insane of it, because it kind of like would probably make the story quite a mess if everyone's just being murdered left and right. Because they'll introduce. It's basically it's very common. They introduce a new character. They'll build him up for a paragraph, and then by the end of the chapter, he's dead. And then his uncle or his best friend or someone else would then come in and then take place. So it's like you kill one guy, then you kill one guy's follower, then you kill that guy, then you kill that guy's big brother, then you kill that guy's uncle because he's the elder, and then it kind of like just keeps going up the fucking ancestry line until you've killed all 9 generations of his family. Because of the lifespans, everyone's pretty much alive for 9 generations of your family. There was another important thing I wanted to find here that kind of helped with the Oh boy, I have a lot of messages I missed from the team. I'll have to respond to that in a minute. Law book. Power system. Grandmaster, whatever that. Aether Nexus. Aptitude. Oh, here we go. This kind of explains it a bit. We'll go with this. This should help with this kind of stuff. I don't know why that was black, but whatever. So aptitude. Not everyone possesses the physical and mental fortitude to undergo transformation into a rune master. Okay, so I just realized this one's a little out of date. Because I kind of like ended up deciding that, oh, fuck it, everyone will be a rune master. So like even like basic people that like do farming and stuff would be like a 9th rank rune master technically, even if they don't have, because you have to think about runes are also wealth. Not everyone has access to runes. Maybe you get lucky and find like a wild rune out in the middle of nowhere, and you can refine it so you can use it. Or maybe there'd be like really like cheap ones some people have access to. And then generally like bandits and stuff would be people that use mixed runes, because it's just like you use whatever you can get. So it'd be more common for like fighting bandits for them to use a plentiful different runes from different pathways, because they don't have access to like a complete kit or a complete set of runes for the pathway they're best suited for. So I'll read this, but some of it's a little outdated. Not everyone possesses the physical mental fortitude to undergo transformation to a rune master. Even among those who do, aptitude varies drastically. For instance, one identical twin might possess A grade talent, while the other only has C grade. Aptitude measures 3 key qualities to determine a person's potential as a rune master. Fortitude, the physical and mental resilience required to withstand the transformation into a rune master. Weak fortitude increases the risk of losing control and degenerating into a monstrous entity. Absorption talent, how efficiently a person can draw aether from the environment and convert it into aether essence within the aether nexus. Basically, how easily they can absorb mana to use. Insight potential, the ability to comprehend runes and fractals. Fractals are basically the parts that make up a rune. So the idea is runes are naturally existing in the environment. Basically, you can kind of think of it like how metals, like ores and stuff, develop over time, like diamonds are made over time. That basically these different pieces, it's kind of like DNA or whatever. Like there's different pieces, or maybe not DNA. What was I thinking of? But if runes are effectively like a mathematical combination, like a combination of ones and zeros, like the idea of yin yang could be represented as ones and zeros, and different combinations of ones and zeros would create different things. So basically, in nature, at all times, there's ones and zeros fucking everywhere, and then as like stuff kind of clumps together, the ones and zeros might happen to form into a pattern that would then become a wild rune. And that's just how like naturally things occur throughout the world, like even our world, like with, as I said, like diamonds, ores, minerals, like everything like that. So the ability to comprehend runes and fractals, enabling rune masters to gain attainment and deeper understanding of their pathway. Generally, half of the population lacks the aptitude to become rune masters entirely, remaining bound to the mortal realm. So this is the outdated part. Among those with potential, only a fraction have eye aptitude, while others tread the precarious path that might lead to instability or worse. This is more when I was playing more of like the Lovecraftian stuff, where not everyone would become a rune master. Some might just become like fucking monsters and like go crazy and shit. So 5 and 10 people have sufficient aptitude to become rune masters, though their talents vary greatly. 4 and 10 people lack aptitude to remain mortal. 1 in 10 lose control and become monsters. A person's aptitude primarily determines their maximum capacity. A person's aptitude, this part is true. A person's aptitude primarily determines the maximum rank that they can achieve as a rune master, reflecting their capacity to store aether essence or mana, their resilience, their ability to gain insight from runes and fractals, and their categorization. Sorry. Assuming Noida keeps a word and does cure Brian, he will become more powerful, but his power comes from the emotion of envy, so how will Brian become stronger yet still fall short when compared to others? Well, the idea is Brian is effectively walking the path, like the rune path of an alchemist. So the envy is kind of like basically envy. Envy is an entity, and she's effectively lending him the rune envy, which the rune envy is in itself basically like a divine rune. It's like a rank 6 divine rune, but it's like a special rune that can be used by people that aren't of divine rank. Because there are unique runes that can be used outside of their respective rank, and the envy rune is one of them. The idea was this is meant to come as it's meant to come at a price. So one of the initial ideas was it would exchange lifespan for power, which is how like the initial Saphira in the chest thing was meant to go. I'm still kind of playing with that idea if I want that to be the case. So it kind of like gives him not necessarily the player, but it kind of like puts like a time limit on how stuff is meant to go. Like he has like something to work towards in the short term or the long term, depending on how you look at it. So he would use envy. We kind of have envy of Brian die by the end of the game. Now, he won't die by the end of the game, but the idea was, this is back when I was still playing with the idea that he wasn't a rune master to begin with. The idea was he would have this lifespan limit on him, and he would have to become a rune master before that happens. That was kind of like the idea there. But things have changed a little bit as we've progressed to try to find a better way of progressing. But ultimately, Brian would basically like if I kind of like my thoughts right now is basically Brian would walk the path of the alchemist, and he would like minor in the heart path. It's kind of like how I'm thinking of it. So like he would minor in the path of manipulating like emotions and desires. That's kind of like how I'm thinking of it. Because obviously the envy rune and envy would eventually have to go back to envy when she claims her defeats the other sins or whatever. But by that point, that would be pretty much interlinked in the way that they wouldn't really separate as far as like relationship goes. Okay, so this is the I guess the important part. The idea is the fortitude, exceptional resilience to the strain of awakening advancement. That doesn't really matter, but the absorption talent. So this is kind of like talking about the bowl idea that everyone basically has a bowl inside them that fills with mana, and there's a limit to how there's for the various just like when you're born and you have various different traits. One of your innate traits would be the size of your initial bowl, basically. Like that's like your potential. So, and then how fast you can fill it. So able to fill up to 80 to 99% of the Aether Nexus capacity. With an innate ability to glean profound understanding from runes and fractals. So then also based on your aptitude from your initial test, basically each academy will do like a test or like a trial where they would get a bunch of seedlings in, get them to do a bunch of tests, test their aptitude, and then based on their grade, they would kind of like say, "Oh, this is your future potential." That doesn't mean it's always set in stone, as is the case with the protagonist, but it's a general guide that most places would use, and people kind of like accept, because unless a miracle happens, you're not really escaping it. So the idea is, if you're A grade, you have like 80 to 99% um, absorption rate. The idea is if your absorption rate meets 100%, that is when your Aether Nexus would then take that next step of evolution into one of the special physiques. So Estelle has effectively 100 plus, or rather, she's approaching the 100% Aether Nexus capacity, which would turn her into the. Would basically turn her into. I still just realized there's a fucking problem with this. I think I've fixed it. This is the older stuff now that I'm going over, so I think this is. Because this doesn't make sense if you're evolving into. You would already have to have the physique. So maybe there would have to be some other explanation or easy way of testing that your Aether Nexus is in heading in the direction of evolving into one of these physiques. But the idea is basically once your aptitude or once your absorption rate hits 100%, that's when you basically effectively die because your Aether Nexus has reached its capacity. So in Estelle's case, she would literally turn into a block of ice because of her cryo phoenix ice, whatever the fuck physique I called it. I still haven't settled on a name for it. But generally, it's like it's like something physique. So like, I think I had like void space physique for Brian or void something physique for Brian, and then Estelle it was like dark ice or ice something physique. Yeah. So basically, people with A grade talent, A grade. So basically, like Saphira. So Saphira would have like somewhere between 80 to 99% Aether Nexus capacity, which is why she's considered like a prime candidate for the academy to take to properly teach and keep, because they're typically able to reach rank 4 or 5. Basically, people that are A grade talent are the ones that have the potential to reach divinity. Also, my music's not playing. Yeah. Alright, sorry guys. Just give me 1 second. I got a bunch of messages I have to respond to. Da-da. Okay. Okay. So where was I? Does any of that make sense so far? I have to rework some of the stuff because I realize it's quite outdated from the current direction I was going. At least as far as like this idea of like the mental stability stuff. I feel like the mental stability would matter in the sense that if you're not like in the right state of mind, something could backfire and you might hurt yourself. But it's not like you become like a Lovecraftian monster or something. Unless you're like doing some weird demonic technique or some weird demonic spell or using some weird demonic rune, then maybe that would lead to you kind of becoming like some kind of body horror monster. So where was I then? Okay, so cycle of forcefully devouring and grafting divine remnants, birthed first generation of ancient divines, known as the Mad Divines. Over time, as the runes and Numira passed through many hosts, diffusing the corruption hidden within, they gradually became cleansed. As chaos waned, the sky, land, and sea slowly realigned into order. Runes. Did I mention runes? Numira. I've mentioned runes. Sky, land, and the sea. If Esther turns into a block of ice, then I'm thinking Brian like becomes like a black hole, or he implodes and like just disappears, which I think would be kind of fitting for him. The idea of just vanishing from the world, at least for the NTR route. I toyed with the idea of Saphira having like some physique, but then I was like, oh, I don't want everyone to have a physique because it kind of like doesn't really mean as much then, does it? It's already enough that Estelle has one, and her route can play around that. Okay, as the various races attained higher, higher intelligence, they developed their own languages, cultivation methods, and fragmentary recollections of history to offset the madness caused by undiluted and unrefined rune usage. Languages, cultivation methods. The first language, Elvish, very original, was created by the first generation Altair King. Okay. Okay. I don't know. So as like the mortal races are kind of, well, I say mortal, but you already have like these some form of divines running around. Um, you also have some of the original. There's still some of the original gods still around, hidden in the shadow. So the idea is that the one of the original gods, the primordial deity worthy of the luminous heavens, to reference my list. So the Master of Arcana is the primordial deity. Chaos. I think it was the Immortal Hunger. The Immortal Hunger. So the primordial deity were the numinous heavens. Basically fights with one of the other original gods that kind of halved half of his shit stripped from the original creator. The slithering chaos. Wait, what was this? More of Eternal Hunger. Oh, no, it's this one. It's Infinite Darkness. Yes, it's Infinite Darkness, not Slithering. It is the Slithering Chaos, but it's not Slithering Chaos. Am I missing something? Stripped the Slithering Chaos of his Ymira. Kismet of Destiny? I think that's what I called it. Kismet of the Universe. Kismet is Destiny. So yeah, Kismet of the Universe, severing his main consciousness from his body, his corpse, and sealing it into 7 portions. This isn't 7 portions related to the sins. I just happened to arrive at 7 for a different reason. Portions, each confined within a room pavilion erected atop his corpse, forming the province later known as the Beating Mountains of the Netorasr supercontinent. So the idea is that this red continent is effectively the corpse of one of the original gods. So this is effectively not from the original world. So the lizard people like Skink that come from this place are not native to the world. They're basically aliens. I didn't do a very good of drawing it, but I kind of wanted the continent to look like it was latching on, like the red continent, the Beating Mountains was latching on, and like I tried to like do like a dragon claw type thing down here, but didn't really, not very good if I can make it maps. Primordial deity with the numinous heavens, the slithering chaos, Kismet of the universe. Beating Mountains, and Netorasr. Okay. Gotta bounce off. Good stream, my dude. That's cool, man. I'll catch you later. Thanks for stopping by. I hope you have a good night's rest. I think you said you're going to bed, didn't you? And I'll catch you later. Try to keep streaming next couple. I'll keep streaming a similar time tomorrow. Beating Mountains of Netorasr. Make sure I check everyone's messages again. Just having a quick read of something here that's the other team member sent me. I think I kind of explained before that I was onboarding a new writer. So yeah, I was onboarding a new writer, and basically they've just finished doing their kind of getting to understand everything that's going on with the previous stuff written. Try to tune in tomorrow, stream if possible. Hey, good night, man. I'll catch you another time. Try to stream tomorrow. There'll be a VOD upload. I'll try to upload the VOD if I do. If you happen to not catch the stream. So sorry, yeah, I'm just going over his stuff here. Because basically, I've kind of explained before that I've written a bunch of stuff like all this lore and world building, but the actual dialogue, I was having trouble writing at a pace I felt comfortable with. I felt like I was taking too long to basically write the scenes and stuff by myself. Because I'm just an amateur writer. I've never written anything before this project. So I wanted another writer to come on board to more take the reins on doing the bulk of the writing. Naturally, I would still be checking everything to make sure it fits the characters and the scene and the overall what I want to do. But yeah, they've just finished kind of like doing their recalibration, I guess, of stuff that's written so far, and I'm just going through what they've done. Don't know if I could really. Don't think I should show it on stream. But I'm just having a quick look. There's nothing really like anything really wrong with showing it. It's just like there's nothing really crazy in there. It's basically just all the dialogue from the scenes so far in the game, just been structured differently, and the narration's been basically it's just a formatting of it. Nothing too secret there. But I'll have to talk to him after the stream to make sure. What's next? Because the idea is basically we get all this stuff kind of like sorted out this week, and then next week here we'll begin writing new scenes. Yeah. So, I'm almost finished with this little section here. So basically, primordial deity basically kills one of the, well, not really kill, but like as kill as you can, I guess, of an actual like god-like entity. One of the other gods, and basically makes his corpse into one of the continents, and then strips him of his power and takes it for himself. And then on basically the other side of the world, you have something similar going on with a different god. You have the union of the all-divine, the primordial pale ooze. Stirred. So the all-divine is another one of the original gods. The primordial pale ooze is just a Numira. Now it's been stripped and arrived at the enter of the world. I kind of like, so basically the Numira, once again, is basically like meant to be like a metaphysical concept or like sphere of power in place of the 9 realms in Norse mythology. So like each of them are kind of like based on something, and then the gods are also kind of based on something. So like all divine, in Chinese light novels, there's the idea of heaven, or heaven being like not necessarily like alive, or but it has like some kind of like basic like consciousness, kind of like an AI almost. and its primary goal is always removing excess and replenishing deficits. And so kind of like, and usually it's called heaven or all heaven or something like that. And then the mythological figure I kind of wanted for this god was Odin, keeping with like the Norse mythology theme. And then Odin is called All Father. So I was like, well, what if I just call him All Divine, basically? And then the Numara he's meant to represent is meant to, it's kind of like a mix of like the 33 heavenly halls or whatever it is from Chinese mythology, or 33 divine courts. 33 is a significant number in Chinese mythology, or and then also kind of playing on the idea of like kind of like a Mount Olympus, where like you have like this is the king's like the god king's kind of throne, and his like where he resides. And then like there's also like another thing to build on is you have the individual runes. This needs to change a lot because I've gone a new direction. But the idea is each of the three original god entities would each be a collection of 8 runes. Now in this version I've kind of split the 24 runes differently between like 2 to 3, or 1 in the case of the bottom one here, lock, between the different gods. It's kind of like a collection, or a rune matrix is what I've called it. So like kind of like they kind of, you could consider it like constellations. How constellations in our sky are made up of like a collection of stars. So like the idea is a collection of runes kind of like naturally form a constellation or a rune matrix. And basically the idea behind that is these are the runes that have like synergistic relationships with each other, and you could safely learn all of these rune paths and be able to use them at the same time and have no repercussions, providing you had the insight and the knowledge and the longevity to actually learn all of that shit, because obviously that's kind of impossible. But there was like meant to be the initial kind of groupings of these, and the idea was over time new groupings were made or created as people innovated and stuff like that. So you had Odin was like the mythical figure originally for all divine, and then the primordial deity of numinous heavens is again based on Buddhism or Tao, however you pronounce it. You have like the 3 supreme ones, or the 3 clear ones, or pure ones, and they're all like called the primordial deity of heavenly treasures, or the primordial deity of something else. And then it's based on Nyarlathotep, which is Lovecraftian. Yeah. So primordial pale ooze is meant to be basically like, I guess actually now that I think about it. So okay, so right. So all divine was meant to be like my version of like the Almighty, like the more Western god, or Abrahamic religion god type thing. And then the Master of the Arcana, or the Numinous Heavens, was meant to be more like an Eastern god. And then the Primordial Mother was meant to be more like an evolution, or like, well, I guess basically just evolution. So the idea of the Primordial Ooze is pretty much the Numara for that, for how evolution went. Yeah. So the idea is the Numara, the Primordial Pale Ooze, got flung to the World Ender, and All Divine basically found it and is using it. And in him using it, or rather, not him, he's joining with it. He's basically like incorporating it into himself to strengthen himself. But in the process of activating it, it then creates, it kind of like stirs life in the sea and begins evolution. And you get a whole host of new creatures entering the world. It's kind of what I was trying to do there. Um, Sorry, 1 second. Uh... Okay, I'm gonna show... Sorry, I'm gonna go through this stuff here on stream for a little bit. This is basically the reformatting I was just talking about before. Okay, so we got the voice in the void, first scene. Where am I? I can't see anything. Cave, no, it can't be. Then you've got narration. So it's pretty much just a restructure of the scene so far and reformatting. Right, so the best format for inner monologue, and then all that. Gray with italics for monologue, and so on. Yeah, okay, so where am I? So in dark. Then you got like the narration. So it's pretty much just reformatting how stuff looks. I think the thing, I don't know about people that have played the game. I'm curious what you guys might think. I kind of felt like the opening scene of the game, you're kind of like staring at a black screen for a while with nothing really happening as Brian kind of like thinks about what's going on. And I kind of wanted to think I wanted to see if there's a better way of presenting that, so there's at least something a little more interesting going on. Because I feel like having like 50 lines of just kind of staring at black is probably a bit too much with nothing visual going on. I was kind of thinking maybe like you would have like some kind of silhouette, like some kind of like light in the distance that's progressively getting brighter and more visible as opposed to blurry. That could be something. Or the other idea was try to frame it in a way that it's more focused on the protagonist recalling their previous life, and you've got like a bit of like a little silhouette, like kind of like comic book strip type thing going on, where it's kind of showing like little flashes of his past life as he's describing them before it fades into the empty stuff that happens. The recall effect is the way to go. Um, his head in a monologue. Finally, there you are. Darkness parts. So you have like the narration, that envy. Then you got a bit of new description of the envy there. Then you've got the questions still. Basically, just dividing the two routes, NTR route and NTS route. Poses questions. More emphasis on different phrases. Because I think a mistake I made in formatting the game currently is I made it so in a monologue. Hey Alan, how you doing? I made it so in a monologue is in grey in italics to help separate it from the normal dialogue. But in doing that, it means you can no longer use italics to emphasize words in a monologue. I know in a lot of other novels, generally you have in a monologue in brackets, so maybe that would be the way forward to do it that style. Um, widens, leans forward. Red-headed woman. A lot of narration parts here. There is a bit of a rework to some of the earlier scenes in this as well. I wanted to kind of like help separate the two routes a bit more instead of keeping the dialogue. Because some of the dialogue, because the way I've done some of the dialogue in the past, it kind of felt like basically you have like dialogue that's kind of like walking the middle between both routes, and either doesn't lean one way or the other, and it's kind of boring. And then you have it separate into the two routes, and then it kind of like goes back into the middle. I kind of wanted her to. Just wanted the dialogue to be a bit stronger in both directions, as opposed to like meandering in the middle in some of the earlier scenes. Um, I guess the more I look at it, separation. I was kind of like, because you have these narration chunks in between the back and forth dialogue. I'm just trying to wonder when it's presented in game how much of this appears per click or per screen or per message box. This kind of seems like a separation of two. That makes sense. And then some of these other ones are much longer. I mean, that's two. That's three. That's one. That's one. That's one. That's three. That's two. Oh no, I mean, I guess it makes sense. That's one. That's two. That's two. Two. One. 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 I guess this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I guess it's fine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I know it's fine. One, two, three, four, five. It's Tasha, calling her goddess, calling her devil. Sorry, I missed some of you guys' comments. I was busy reading this. The recall effect is the way to go. It makes more sense that our Brian would view past Brian memories in a different light. Having a visual representation would make sense. For thoughts, you could add a sound effect unique to only the thoughts or telepathic combos between Brian and Envy. That's interesting. Different font, that also could be interesting as well. Sound effects would give freedom to tweak visuals. The player won't be confused as to what is thought or spoken words. Yeah, that could be an interesting way to do it. So there's okay. So first off, there was some changes I wanted to make in regards to Envy's appearance. Pretty much just pertaining to her color scheme. That's kind of changed. But I'm so curious what you think of it so far. So this is to, where does this go to? This goes to this goes to Man in the Mirror. Sorry. If Eric doesn't outright hate Brian, does that mean there's a chance, really small chance, they could become friends, or at the very least, peers who tolerate each other with minimal hostility? This fact just saying that Brian comes from jealousy, Brian's loving relationship with Tasha. Couldn't Tasha bring the two together? Well, for the NTR route, he's gonna obviously try to like replace Brian as Tasha's son, and then like try to act like a dad figure to Brian and humiliate him in that. So I can't imagine them being best friends. And then for the, sorry, that was for the NTR route. everything I just said. For the NTS route, that's obviously meant to go in a completely different direction. That's meant to be the optional trap shoot-off route where you can dominate Varric. The idea was going to be that basically, obviously, NTS Brian tries to push them to have their relationship, and then he'll try to help train Tasha to be more dominant. And then the idea is to teach her to try to go more dominatrix BDSM route on Varric, preparing him for Brian to enter the picture and take control of Varric. And it's very much going to be like a Tasha can't live without Varric's dick, but then Varric can't live without Brian's dick. Kind of a line there. Because obviously in the NTS route, Brian would be much better equipped after the alchemy lessons go over. Um, or bit different from the original, or what's in the game right now. Lee is ending from Tekken 4. Lee in a Speedo. I don't think I've never played a Tekken game. So I kind of know some of the... Actually, do I know the... No, I know some of the Street Fighter characters. I actually don't know... Don't know any of the Tekken characters. I know there's a bear, I think. I feel like I've seen that in some YouTube video. Thinking that Varric and Renfair work together crop Tosh further. So that was kind of like... That's another angle. I kind of wanted there to... It's kind of like being built up to, but the idea is you would go into a dungeon with the protagonist Tasha, Renfrey, and Varric. And the idea was that in the NTR route, Varric is kind of like getting Renfrey to distract the protagonist, while Varric hangs out with Tasha. And then for the NTS route, it's kind of like using Renfrey to help get Tasha and Varric together. Or get stuff to happen between them. To push for that. So yeah, Renfrey is meant to kind of like come into the picture there at some points. And then the idea is I kind of wanted there to be like some kind of like crossplay or overlap between Tasha and Skink's route, where Skink could kind of like teach Tasha some things. Why does the music keep pausing after like every 3 songs? Okay, the bot just spammed every message at once. This is cool. It's definitely much more better presented and easier to follow than how I had it before. Okay, so continue on for this for a little bit. So I'm almost finished with this section, and then I'll probably stop working on this stuff for a little while. The union of all divine primordial pale ooze stirred. What is happening? Stirred the discordant sea, accelerating the evolution of aquatic turn terrestrial race known as the Tashka, who made landfall upon the island of Kasha off the coast of mainland Netorasr. Primordial pale ooze. Primordial pale ooze. Have I mentioned all divine yet? No. All divine. Discordant sea. Kesh. Netorasr has been mentioned. Kasha. Keep fucking blanking out. Okay, so the idea is then the two gods, all divine and primordial deities, start fighting amongst themselves, and they ultimately, presumably, reach mutual destruction. It's kind of what's going on. Kind of like, this is also another spot where I'm kind of leaving a blank of, like, I'm leaving like a blank spot where there's room to fill in later, or at least leave some mystery to it. Because obviously I'm trying to detail this stuff as much as possible for my own ease of use for knowing when stuff happens and trying to chronologically timeline different events. But I don't want to have everything completely detailed to every exact detail, because it is kind of like fun to have some mystery and like not knowing some stuff, kind of like how stuff kind of went from one place to another. So there's a few spots in here I've kind of like left like a blank period where some other stuff could happen that leads to the next event. Um, so where was I? The all divine and the primordial deity, worthy of the numinous heavens, having acquired additional Emira, begin to have conflicts with one another. Culminating in their ultimate battle and presumed mutual destruction. I thought of something Sophia related, therefore I must share it. Okay. Hmm. Um, what if the Akari make another bet with Severa and she loses? She must go on a quest. They make her go on a quest with them. So she's gone for like 5 days. She comes back drastically different and running on a body. No text anything different about Severa. Something Brian used the end of power to suit be not to, and he sees isn't pleasant. Okay. Yeah, something like that could happen. They would a lot would have happened in those 5 days. Jesus. Tattoos and piercings. But another all divine primordial deity has been highlighted. There's heavens, Nemira. Yeah, that's all fine. The primordial deity worthy of the luminous heavens before his demise activates his resurrection method deep within his Nemira, the Aleph mana. Now, the Aleph mana, which is the Nemira that the primordial deity Numinous Heavens originally owns, is the place from the beginning of the game where the protagonist wakes up. It's effectively like a place. It's, I guess, similar function to how like the Void Hold or whatever the fuck it's called in the Round Table Hold works in Elden Ring. It's like a space outside of space and time that the protagonist is connected to, and it's what originally pulled him into this. Basically, it activated his transmigration, basically. And the protagonist is the one that has a connection to this place, not Envy. Envy kind of like just happened upon it and kind of got stuck there. And she kind of like sees the protagonist in the middle of his transmigration. That's when she kind of like used remnants of her power to kind of like pause his transmigration so she can interact with him and then try to hitch a ride, like parasitizing herself to him to hitch a ride on his transmigration to escape the place. That's kind of what's going on. So the idea is, we need to make a map for it. There's no pixel art assets for this place, but the idea is like a spooky ghost manor place in like a void of fog. Yeah. I'm gonna have to probably go shortly as I need to start talking seriously with the other person about this writing stuff instead of because he kind of needs my input right now and I don't want to keep him waiting. But I will continue. I will stream again tomorrow. I'll probably try to start a similar early time. Try to go for a longer stream tomorrow. And yeah. For the Sphere Elba stuff, I thought about a mimification scenario where he makes Sphere look like Barbie, blonde hair, pink dress, like submissive. You can make Brian being stalked by an entity of the place, a stranger to the void. That could be interesting. Saphira, yeah, I think we talked about it before, but with the potion idea or like temporary stuff, there's a lot you could do with Saphira with the Elvis stuff. That could be interesting. As like temporary scenes or like I'm much more inclined to do the temporary stuff because if it's permanent, it changes a lot of stuff in surrounding it. But the idea of doing temporary scenes or like little arcs, that could be really interesting. But yeah, sorry guys for the sudden end of stream, but I have to go talk to the other writer and help him make sure we get through this stuff and we're on the same page and he can move forward with what he needs to do. Because he's kind of waiting for me to respond properly. Um, so yeah, I'm hoping for some more Saphira groping scenes. There'll definitely be more Saphira scenes. Next update, of course, is still focused on Tasha, and there'll be the Crowley introduction as well, and maybe even Albus's assets are finished, but he hasn't been animated yet, so maybe not Albus. But at least I'd like to get Crowley's stuff in, if time permits. But yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the stream. Pretty big lore, world building, information overload stream. But yeah, try to stream tomorrow, similar start time. I will upload the VOD after this stream. And yeah,